Right now, ahead of next month's runoff in May. Keisha Rogers, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Hello.
So I have a couple of questions for you. There were 5 candidates in the initial primary election, and you got about 22% of the vote. What have you been doing in the meantime ahead of next month's runoff?
Well, we have been nonstop throughout the state. I have organizers and members of my team all across the state of Texas, from El Paso all the way out to Texarkana, up all the way to Lubbock, down to South Texas and the Valley.
Now, there's been some criticism even from some leaders in your own party that perhaps you are not democratic enough, but you've said that the Democratic Party has lost its way, and you've been calling for a return to the legacies of like JFK and FDR. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Right now, what we're seeing is that the Democratic Party has been taken over by the Wall Street and London financial interests, the policy of bailout and bail-in that's being protected by President Obama, along with his numerous crimes that are warranting immediate impeachment, is not a Democratic or Republican issue. It's a question of defending and protecting our Constitution. And that's what I take an oath of office to, is to defending the Constitution. And this president has to be impeached now. But my policy to restore the JFK-FDR legacy is so that we can actually reinstill the Producers Alliance, which was the beacon of the Democratic Party, for people like Jim Wright, Ralph Yarbrough, Wright-Patman, and Henry B. Gonzalez, those in the Democratic Party that fought against the Wall Street interests in the interest of our Producers Alliance. That's our agriculture, our industry, our manufacturing, full-scale science driver projects, the full funding and commitment to our space program. We have a drought in Texas right now. We have a looming food crisis, and that's what Democrats should be concerned about. How are we going to put our nation back to work in productive jobs? How are we going to actually organize a productive economy again? And that's what Franklin Roosevelt, that's what John F. Kennedy stood for, and that is our American system.
But calling for the impeachment of the current Democratic president seems like a sure way to drive away many Democratic voters in this state.
Actually, it's not. I mean, I've won 2 congressional primaries running for the House of Representatives in 2010, 2012, with a very strong out front platform on impeaching this president and actually exposing his crimes. And Democrats voted for me. Also, I continued in my campaign for the U.S. Senate now in a runoff election, and people understand that my platform goes much further than just impeaching the president, but what it represents is that I'm going to actually stand up and tell the truth. And I go out and I talk to people. You know, you have people who are Democrats, who are independents, people who have left the party because they're not happy at all with the turning away from the real Democratic tradition and falling in line with Democrats and Republicans really representing no difference, because they're in favor of protecting the money interest over the interest of the people.
So let's say that you do make it past this Democratic runoff. How do you try to defeat the Republican nominee, considering this has been traditionally in recent years a Republican post?
Well, I can tell you now that John Cornyn is part of the problem, and what he is doing is a continuation of protecting the interests of the free market bail-in, bail-out policy, protecting Obama, because he will not go against, he's really not going against Obama, even though he says he is, because Republicans, their talking point right now is that this president should just stay in and we should wait for another election. But the reality we're facing right now is that you have a breakdown of the financial system, the physical economy is in shambles, and you have a policy of a bail-in policy that is going to continue to destroy our banking and financial system unless we go for Glass-Steagall banking reorganization now. And Glass-Steagall is going to be a key in this next election. Anybody who's not in support of it, and anybody who's not in support of immediately removing this president now, is not fit to be in office. And John Cornyn has really not shown any policies that he has for turning this collapsed system around, for dealing with this water crisis, the drought, and the physical breakdown crisis that we're seeing that's in the state of Texas. And what we got to do is we have to make Texas a leader in industry, science, agriculture development, again, for the entire nation. And that's what I intend to do.
Last question. We have about 30 seconds left. Your opponent, Dr. David Alamiel, has called for a minimum wage increase of $15 an hour. What is your stance on this issue?
I think we do need increases in minimum wage, but also I think we need more so living wages. As I said, we're facing record unemployment, and we have to put our nation back to work in productive jobs, because a wage, people who have no wages, 0 to 0 is still 0. So what we need to do is put our nation back to work, put our people back to work in productive jobs again.
You know, we do have time. I want to come back to something you mentioned. You talked about fully funding the space program. Obviously, this would be big in Texas since we have all the NASA programs in Houston. How would you actually see that this funding is something that could be a reality?
Well, first of all, we need to not have our space program as discretionary, whoever feels like it funding. It needs to be a major priority. And we just have to have, first of all, we have to have Glass-Steagall. We have to have a credit program that's going to put funding into large-scale science driver projects. Nuclear power, a fusion economy, and programs such as how the United States, NASA, and our space program is going to continue to work in collaboration with other nations, in particular nations such as Russia and China, on advanced scientific endeavors.
Keisha Rogers, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. Good luck in the rest of your campaign ahead of that May 27th runoff.
Thank you very much.
And still to come, 4 U.S. presidents join here in Austin for this week's LBJ Civil Rights Summit, when State of Texas In Depth returns.